Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mike. I am the American Analyst, and today we are going to be talking about China, the United States, and Huawei, as well as getting to a little bit of tech with some 5G. If you like what I do, please be sure to subscribe to me here on YouTube and follow me on Twitter and Minds. Now, let's get into it. Okay, so tonight we are going to be talking about Huawei. That is the correct pronunciation, by the way, Huawei. 5G, the race for 5G, and the general global political context as of right now, as well as always, the historical context. But firstly, all right, we are upgrading here at the American Analyst. Always making things a little bit more enjoyable for you. Of course, that's Washington crossing the Delaware, if you didn't know, gloriously. I would add gloriously crossing the Delaware. Huawei. Let me give you a background on this, firstly. So, for those of you who have heard Huawei and 5G and just not known what is going on, 5G is the next iteration of telecommunications technology. So on your phone, you got, right now it's 4G LTE, I believe. Before that was 4G, and then keep going. There's 3G LTE, then 3G. The G is generation, so this is the fifth generation. I have heard from people who, or spoken to rather, people who know a lot more about this than I do. And they have said that it's not really it's not true 5G in that it's not new technology. It's just vast improvements upon existing technology. But it's still going to greatly increase the speed at which cellular communication takes place. So the internet on your phone is going to be faster, downloads are going to be faster, pretty much everything. And there is a current race right now between the United States and China as to who is going to be the leader in implementing this technology, who's setting up the cell towers in implementing this technology. And this matters for a lot of reasons. Firstly, economics. These are going to be giant deals with whole countries. And I suspect that eventually the world is going to be divided up into those on the American network and those on the Chinese network. You'll still be able to communicate, but as in who's providing the technology. That's what I think is going to end up happening 5 to 10 years. And Britain, it seems, is going with the Chinese. That's not exactly true. So this article, that's the background. Huawei is a Chinese telecommunications company, and they're winning right now. I've done a little bit of research into Huawei previously, and they were founded by a military engineer who was formerly with the Chinese People's Republic Army, or the Army of the People's Republic of China, or whatever it is. I mean, this is an organ. A good example of this would be like a more extreme version of the BBC. I realize it's not an exact comparison, but the BBC is a corporation which is owned, or at least it in the past, it was owned entirely by the British government. Of course, Huawei doesn't admit that, but they're owned and funded by the Chinese government. And one of the biggest concerns that the United States has is with spying and intellectual property theft. And more, of course, broadly, but Huawei is the main culprit, I would say. And to be honest with you, they are an innovative company. Look at their phones. Look at some of their phones, and they're better in many ways than Android, Samsung, Apple phones. Samsung's Korean company, I believe, but Android and Apple phones, they're better in a lot of ways than those phones. I mean, this is a legitimate challenge to Silicon Valley. There was recently a conference in Germany, a security conference. I believe Nancy Pelosi attended it. She's down here somewhere. And the United States had said that regardless of whether countries decide to implement Huawei, which again is an organ of the Chinese government, whether or not they implement it, we will still be collaborating with them on intelligence issues, meaning like CIA, NSA type stuff. So counterterrorism mainly. So we'll still be collaborating with our European allies, and Britain included, regardless of whether they do this, at least for now. That may change. And we'll see if that is the right thing. I mostly wanted to use this as a means to talk more broadly about Huawei. So the first thing I thought about when I read this was this would not have happened 5 years ago when they rolled out 4G or 4G LTE. Without getting too much into tech stuff, the main thing is that it wouldn't have even been a contest between who's setting this up. Would it be an American company or a Chinese company? It would have been, between American companies, essentially. Like, all right, who is this going to be? Verizon? Is this going to be Verizon, AT&T, Sprint? And it's just, it shows more broadly the rise of China onto the world stage. I am not worried in any way about Russia as globally. I mean, they were much more of a formidable opponent when they were the Soviet Union, which obviously has fallen apart, coming on 30 years now. Good riddance, if you ask me. This is what I want to show you. So this is GDP. GDP is a measure. If you take all of the products and services in a nation, add them all together, that's your GDP. More or less. So the United States has the world's highest GDP, world's biggest economy. 20 million is the current GDP. That's gross domestic product of the United States. And this just shows you 13 trillion for China, 13 million. And then the next number 3 is Japan, close to 5 million. And that is amazing. Look at the difference. It's going to be us and China in the future. And here you have Canada. Keep that in mind. Canada has a bigger gross domestic product than the Russian Federation. I'm not worried about them. China is what I am quite worried about. And Huawei is probably the best example of that in modern times. Just recently, 4 of their officials were arrested and accused of basically intellectual property theft along with their CFO. CFO, one of the biggest companies in the world, he wasn't arrested, but the 4 were, but he was accused by the United States government of intellectual property theft. Okay, so why should you care about this? Why does all this matter? And the United States has done in its history. We have done the isolationism thing. We've done that. It's tough for me to say because, there's certainly things like we give so much money to other countries for what appears to be no particular good reason. We did. We give an exorbitant amount of money. But there's, like everything, even the dumbest law. Like if you go on Google and search dumb laws, I'm sure there was a reason that was put in place. It would sound dumb to us now, but I'm certain that even dumb things like that at one point made sense. And the reason that I bring that up is that although you'd say, why are we building wells in some random country halfway around the world. Who cares? Why don't we spend that money here? Yeah. The thing is that we've tried it. And twice we got dragged in to a European war because we decided to stay out of it, and then we had to intervene anyway. In the case of the Second World War, I can tell you that had America had a more... we couldn't have just jumped in, say, 1938 and stopped anything. That was impossible. But if we had a more long-term foreign policy and were more active on the world stage, then we could have probably prevented the Second World War, or at least it certainly would not have turned out the way that it did. And I think the main thing is that, here's a point I wanted to make. If we withdraw from the world stage, spend all that money that we're doing overseas, take it and spend it at home, eventually, and I believe in a shorter time than people think, the problems, our chickens will come home to roost, if you will. I mean, think about it. It took us getting attacked to go into the Second World War. It's literally what it took. And again, it's tough for me. It is tough for me because you see these things and it's just like, God, that's so dumb. Why are we spending so much money over there? And I'm going to end on this point. Here's something I want you all to keep in mind. Since the Industrial Revolution, 1776, first all steam-powered factory, opens up in Great Britain. Since that year, the world order has been dominated by an English-speaking liberal Western democracy. Now, we're not perfect by any means. We're far from it. But Britain previously, because a lot of Americans don't know that for a very long time, Britain was the most powerful nation on the planet by far. And it's worth keeping in mind that if we would withdraw from the world stage, or perhaps being forced from it, China would reorient the world around a China-centric, obviously, but also illiberal, communist world order. And that would look very, very different. I got my boy George sitting behind me. The United States and Britain, they certainly contribute, the British, certainly contribute just as much as we did. We made the world free. We did. And if we choose to abandon that legacy, the world is going to come back and we will be forced back onto the world stage. It's happened twice already, and there are certainly areas we can draw back. But Huawei is just the beginning to bring it home. This is just the beginning. China is coming for us. Eventually, whether it's 5 years or 50, eventually they will have a bigger economy than the United States. We've had the largest economy in the world since 1898. And so, that's why I say the 20th century was the American century. Eventually, they're going to pass us. The 21st century could be the Chinese century. I don't know. There seem to be historical forces at work that are not necessarily beyond our control, but is as about as beyond our control as it is possible to be in human societies. All right, I'm going to leave it there. Very brainy episode, but I wanted to talk about China and why I believe that we need to oppose them. And I'm going to make this final distinction. This is the Chinese government. the Communist Chinese government, of which I'm speaking. The Chinese people have a long and rich history that is extremely interesting. Very interesting, very rich culture. I don't ascribe any of the ideals of the Communist Party of China to the Chinese people. Just look at the stuff that's going on in Hong Kong. They're waving British and American flags in Hong Kong to protesting their communist regime. All right. All right, I'm going to leave it there. Constant improvements here on The American Analyst. If you like what I do, please be sure to subscribe to me here on YouTube and follow me on Twitter and Minds. Have a good one. Thank you all for listening. This is Mike, The American Analyst. Follow me on Twitter, Minds, and subscribe to me on YouTube. And be sure to hit that bell notification. I'll be coming out with new videos every single day for your viewing enjoyment. Have a good one.